Hey, what's up everybody? This is Truth here. Today we're going to be looking at the airship I made for Realm of Vastin, and sort of how I got my ideas for it, as well as put the design together and came up with this final product that we have here in front of us. Currently I am on the World of Estera server in the plot world dimension, and this is where I did a lot of my testing with World Edit and Creative. It just let me be free to really get a design shaped out before I went into ROV or Realm of Vastin and put the whole build together. Right in front of us here we have the full block palette. I'm pretty sure I didn't miss anything. Hopefully I didn't. The full block palette for the airship we have in front of us. As you can see, I've copied it into just a more convenient place to look at over here. Basically with this airship, the first thing I did, because I hadn't have built a boat in a long while in Minecraft, probably about 3 years, I did look at some quick boat building tutorials just by searching on YouTube, just to get an idea of where to begin with building a boat, getting a shape. Obviously I had a look at a lot of the guys' boats on Realm of Vastin. There's a multitude of them in Port Bray, and they gave me some inspiration of how to get a shape mapped out roughly. I'm gonna do a little example here in a moment of how I just got the shape roughed out, and then why I took it different places, just to make it more what I wanted, basically. I will say the next step I do, creating any sort of build that I might be able to gain some photographical or visual representation for inspirations for, I jump on either Pinterest or Google Images, either or, and just have a search around for 30 minutes, an hour or so, just to have a look at plenty of builds that can give you inspiration for other builds in the future, looking in similar styles like steampunk or medieval, but it's always a good way to start, just to see if there's anything that really catches your eye. You can see here I've got these side sails. These were heavily inspired by a picture that I got from one of my fellow Vastin members, Old Grey Man. I told him I was making an airship, and he sent through a couple pictures that he had for possible inspiration for an airship that he might want to do one day. So I did steal that idea, but he graciously gave it to me and was impressed by the result. So luckily he's happy that I used that idea. But yeah, so we're going to jump in. I'm going to lay out basically a skeleton spine that is matching to this boat over here, and just show you why I sort of went with the size, and just show you the full building process step by step, maybe, so that you can sort of see where I went to create the full boat. Alright, we'll be back in a minute. Alright guys, so here we are back. As you can see, the example that I'd had copied here is gone. That's because I just found it quite a bit easier to strip away at the example than rebuild the skeleton that we have here. As you can see, I've still got a copy over here, so I haven't completely got rid of it. And you can see a little balloon here that I'm going to be putting in Vastin very soon. Basically, what we have here is the skeleton of the ship. This is where I started when building this ship. Gave me a good idea of the shape, the size of the ship, just giving me an idea of how this ship is going to look in the end, without building the whole ship. From here I can see exactly what this shape is going to look like from pretty much all angles, because this is the furthest out my ship goes. As you can see, the walls are a little bit indented, so I know that this is the furthest point that they're going to stick out. And we can see it tapers off at the front and at the back, just like most ships do. This is where I start, purely because it allows me to see the, like I said, the shape and the size, and make changes to them if I don't like them, without getting completely done and then realizing that it wasn't a good shape, it wasn't a good size. I needed to take the front in a bit to make sure it wasn't too long, or vice versa. And that's why starting with a skeleton is good. The next piece of advice I have for any type of building that I find helps me, at least, is having a good community or network of people, other builders, or even just friends. It doesn't matter if they do or don't play the game. If they're happy enough to give you advice on something, it really doesn't matter who is going to give this advice, but preferably probably builders, just because they're more in tune with the game and most likely interested in what you're doing. I find having them there to show progress, progress screenshots, and just different little photos of maybe inspiration or of the build itself over time can help just completely give you some support, inspiration, or advice. Will help you create the best build you can. Their constructive criticism, advice, and just motivation that friends or other community members can have on you is very, very helpful in the building process, I've always found. I personally post a lot of these progress screenshots in Fixit412's Discord, as well as sending them directly to a few of the other Vasta members that I've played with on VD, because I appreciate their advice, and I think they push me to be the best builder I can be. But lots and lots of community members just motivated me and helped me with little bits of advice here and there along the way on this build and many other builds in the past. So yeah, using something like a Discord server with builders, I would say most of you watching would probably be coming from Fixit's channel or Fixit's Discord themselves. Already know that the progress screen, the screenshots and more section of the Discord is a very useful place to post up progress screenshots of your build, so that people can comment on them, give you advice, and help you out with some ideas, or just little things, even like maybe changing a wood type or something like that, just to make your build that little bit better. Alright, so basically what we have here after that little rant is basically what we have is about a 32 block long piece on the bottom here. It is double thick because originally it was right here. I found it a little bit weird in the end and decided to go one more down just to give it a bit more shape on the bottom. Looks like I destroyed that. That's all right. As you can see as well, I did try and put some differentiation into the wood type. It is still dark oak, but I've used stripped on the top layers all across all of these beams that come up, just to give it a little bit something extra, just to make it a little bit different, a little bit interesting, rather than keeping it completely as the dark oak, not stripped, at the bottom here. This just, even slight changes like this can just make a build so much more interesting. I do find, however, a lot of people tend to use things like this, straight up side by side, like that, or probably more so running up and down. I wouldn't suggest using it like this personally. In certain cases, obviously, there's an exception to every rule. I've found when people do make rules, there is always going to be an exception to them. People can always break rules and find good ways of using things, but typically I don't suggest putting two very distinct sort of block types right next to each other flush. So I would only have done this coming up and out by one, as you can see there with the stairs all along the bottom. I did use stairs all along the bottom just mainly to help me with getting up to the next block, but in the end it does round out the bottom of the build a lot nicer than just the full blocks can, and ends up being a much nicer build because of these stair blocks. So it's just something to think about whenever you're building, especially something that isn't a flat wall or a flat house. When you're using curves, especially in this setting where stairs work really well. Obviously they can't go on their side for, like, say, a curved wall, but in this setting you can see that the stairs add a lot to just help that curve really come up and into its own. But yeah, this is sort of where I would start, coming from a builder's perspective on a boat, just with a skeleton. Keeping it simple, keeping it easy, making sure you get your shape and size right, so that you're ready to keep on going with the build, and you know you're going to be happy with the shape and size moving forward. Alright guys, so here I'm back, and now we're looking at the second sort of stage that I reached when building this boat, which is the walls, and I do have that cabin on the back that we talked about, as well as some of the details on the main hull and ship part of the boat, the body of the boat. So as you can see here, I just followed this same sort of curve up, just bringing it up along, slightly indented against these sort of beams. This is not all types of boats. I've seen plenty of amazing boats that don't have any sort of indentation and need these beams. Plenty of them in Vaston are amazingly built boats that don't use this style. This is just the style that I went for this boat specifically, and really all you need is a shape to get started. If you've got a nice shape that you're happy with, you can get started with any material, any block type, anything. That's the biggest thing you can take from this, is just working out that nice shape beforehand. You can go with any sort of style and any sort of block type that you'd really want. Obviously stairs and slabs are going to make that a lot easier to shape out coming into these stages of the boat build, especially with 1.14 now. We're going to have a lot more options in the ways of slabs and stairs, but still thinking, in my opinion, still thinking, what would a boat be built out of, or what is going to fit with your world is what I always think before I start a build. As you can see, these ones all look pretty similar on here. They're exactly the same. But you can see as we get into this stage where it does start going up, I've just started making slight exceptions, just taking off one slab just to make it look like it's slightly coming up here, and then obviously a much more steep ascent here coming into the back where it has to sort of curve right around. So making the skeleton helps because it just allows us to work in between these smaller lines. It makes a lot of this more manageable to work with, because I was just doing one section, and not worrying about the rest of the boat until I'd finished each section. I'd finish one, start another, and that was all that was on my mind. It just makes the build a lot more manageable. Sort of splitting it up into little easy to take size bits, basically. So as you can see along here, we've just got it all tapering nice up into the front here. So yeah, really just building walls and getting it filled out is the next step. If you want windows, if you want cannons, whatever you're looking for in that regard, basically up to you, but this is where I went in this direction. As you can see here as well, I started using a different material for the walls. Again, just to make it a little bit more interesting, split it up a little bit. I did use dark oak slabs in here because I was hiding the birch wood that I've used for the deck and used for the stairs on the inside here. Trapdoors I've used all along here to cap off these beams. Trapdoors are a great way to just finish something. When you have lines going up like this, instead of just leaving them blank, trapdoors offer a nice little cap. I'm sure everyone knows this. I've used plenty of trapdoors on this build, as you can see. They also offer just nice little bits of depth, just to split up different textures as well. As you can see here, like these two textures, not even close to really meshing flush side by side. So just bringing those trapdoors in really just helps give that just enough of an indent that it works together, in my opinion. And same in here, it just helps offer a little bit of depth without showing that bright white that the birchwood offers. We can just cover that up, and it looks really, really smooth and really clean, in my opinion. We did have a few problems here that I had to improvise when I was building this cabin for the captain. If we look in here, I've got a full wall here, and we had to bring the floor up to fit with our window that we've got in the back of the boat. Because of this wall, where I had the floor going on the outside here, the top of the wall was actually sticking outside this floor. And obviously we needed a bit of a higher roof in this back section to fit with the window on the back here. So bringing this wall right up, keeping the floor the same height, and even sticking another window in here was just a little design feature I chose to go with, just because we had to work around the fact that it wasn't really meshing well. And I think this came out quite nicely for the fact that I'd miscalculated a little bit, putting this window in the back and then putting this down here at such a low level on the front portion of the captain's quarters. So I think it came out really well for the fact that you do screw up every once in a while. There are different little things that and design choices that you make along the way that can impede or impact each other poorly, but learning to just overcome those little things and just work around them sometimes if you're not inclined to go all the way back and restart. There's going to be good ways of going around them and figuring out things that you wouldn't have done otherwise. I wouldn't have built something like this on the back here, this portion. I wouldn't have done this otherwise, other than the fact that this wall stuck out, unfortunately. But you use that to your advantage in the end. As you can see, obviously just having a little way down to the bottom as well. Other than that, guys, this boat isn't very complicated. It's a lot of little pieces that come together to make one complete build, but it's not a complicated build when you strip it down to its bare bones. The skeleton is very simple. All of these pieces are exactly 3 apart. Even these ones on the end where it tapers upwards. I personally like to work on odds, but keep it simple. All of them are 3 apart, even coming down to this end. There's 3 more, and then we have our final little just pointing out bit here on the end. You just like to work with what you got. The only one I made an exception was this 2 on the back, because it was going to look way too long on the back. I just didn't like the shape when I was doing it. I did have it originally sticking out to 1 block out from here, but it just didn't work for me, so I bring it in 1 block, and that's really the only exception I made in the rule of 3s that I've used all along this boat. But yeah, it's not a complicated boat when you can look at it in all of its little parts. The deck obviously is just birch slabs that I did arrange them more nicely here. I wanted to be able to step up onto the side without having to do anything, but I also wanted this to be on a full block so that I could place things on the deck later on. So just bringing it down a slab and just working that in sort of nicely. Obviously, I just like to think about things how they might naturally be in real life. Obviously, if this is a main support beam on this side, obviously it might look a little bit more supportive coming out of that, holding up the floor. There could be beams running across under here or something like that that are just pushing up the floor in these sections. So just thinking about the little things that you can do just to make it a little bit more realistic, even if people don't, people might not realize them. They're just things that you can think about and know that you've done yourself to make this build a little bit more significant. Just tiny little things like that. Alright guys, the next thing we're going to look at is I'm going to chuck the sails on this boat, my side sails, and we're just going to have a quick look at them. Obviously they connect here, and they connect down here. As you can see, this one's a little bit lower. That's due to the fact that the side sail is typically there. So it was regular once upon a time. That's not the right stair. It was regular once upon a time and uniform with the rest of these, but I did make the exceptions and changed quite a bit of this boat to fit those side sails in, as well as the rudder on the back, making little exceptions to really know that those are moving or they are there. So I'm going to quickly chuck those on and we'll be back. Alright guys, so we're back here with the boat with the sails on now. So we've got the two front sails, we've got the two larger back sails, and also our rudder. So this is our contraption, I guess, machine to steer the boat. You can see it's catching a little bit of wind from the side, which is one thing that I feel some people don't think about when creating things like sails or trees or things like that. That you can think a lot more about how a tree got light, how it would grow in that area because of what light it's getting. Will it grow towards the light because that's what it wants? Is it going to be as green or as bushy and thick? Is it getting enough light to grow like that, or is this catching wind from the left hand side or the right hand side, and how is that going to affect how this looks? Because this has got this middle beam, we can see that the sail is connected here, from here to the middle beam, and it's catching wind from this right hand side, so it's being pushed out this way, as well as this top bit, also connected to the middle beam to this top beam and being pushed out this way. I didn't make as much exceptions with these sails in the ways of how they're being pushed, just because I think this is very slight and only being pushed because it's typically a very straight on sort of sail, meaning it's going to be affected more by winds coming across horizontally than these sails here, which I just left exactly the same regardless of side. So you can make exceptions, but when you can do things like this, I don't see why not. It's just it comes across a lot better, I find, in a build when it's got a little bit more life to it like this. These sails were heavily inspired by a picture that I was sent by one of my fellow Vastinians when I told him I was building an airship. It was, I believe, a picture of a Lego. I think it was a Lego airship that he'd found somewhere that had these really big side sails on it, and I instantly wanted to build them. So I did steal that idea. I'm sure he doesn't mind now that I've done it, because I can't really take it back. I built it in survival over in Realm of Vastin but they were heavily inspired by that picture that he sent me, and you can see here they are quite simple in how they work. It's purely comes out from one of our main beams, so our support beams. Obviously, coming off those support beams would be typically where this sail you would want this sail to come out of the boat, because that's where it's going to be most supported, so it won't fall off. If this was I guess not real life, but if this was in a real situation, that's where I would probably want to attach it to, something supportive. We can see here that it's got this one main beam running down and sort of coming out at the end here, just on a bit of a diagonal, with just a few cross beams, the bigger ones at the back, to hold the sails in. This front one, I pretty much just took this section of it, pushed it up, and then stuck a little cross beam on it just to connect it to the boat, and that's pretty much it. I didn't have to make too many exceptions with this one, purely because it was just a smaller version of this, that I didn't have to change too much. I did change it back just to make it a little bit more rounded out. I didn't want it running completely beside the boat as this the bottom half does, but otherwise it's pretty much similar to this section here. It's a bit smaller on this top half as well. There's not much to these sails other than a bit of wool, a bit of wood. Obviously, just with everything slightly organic, it takes time just to shape it out and get the shape that you're looking for. I think I spent a good few hours on these sails. I got them down in 10 minutes, but I spent a few hours just making sure that they were the shape I wanted, and had the little bits. I used little bits of spruce fencing all along, just to sort of act as, I don't know, something coming through the sails to sort of make it feel like it's nailed down or held in at certain points. And I used the typical red plus or the surplus button, because this ship is meant to be an aid ship. We did have I did have a bit of a conversation with Fix about not bringing things from the real world into Vaston, sort of like this, the Red Cross being aid, but it was more religious sort of symbols and things like that in the real world that he wanted to stray away from, because they are they're used a lot in the real world, and the religions don't translate to the real world. But aid is going to be a more they don't translate to Realm of Vaston. What am I talking about? The religions don't translate to Realm of Vaston, being that the religions in Realm of Vaston are Enderism, or the Church of the End, the Church of Man, who worship man's ingenuity, and I believe their Netherism might be another one, but those are purely Realm of Vaston religions, so they're not going to have the same sort of symbolism as real life religions, but aid is sort of universal, so I thought it was alright to use this red plus just to really signify aid, because regardless of culture, creed, the red plus sort of means the same thing to everyone, or at least everyone can recognize what this red plus means. So yeah, just knowing as well where you can put interest in. So putting this red cross was a conscious decision to have a little bit more interest in these sails, because I didn't want them to just be plain white. As well, what we're going to do now, we're going to run over to this one, because the only thing left to show is the balloon. Basically, the other thing I want to stress is you don't have to be stuck to using what most people use for builds. I used wool on these sails, yes, which is typically used for sails. If you make airships, you'll see a lot of airships, they use wool for their balloons as well. You don't have to be caught in that. Up here I have used white terracotta. I will quickly mention, I was meant to mention at the start of the video, currently I'm using the Little Taste of Vastin pack made by Jermsy Boy, which is a bit of a offshoot or spin-off of his own pack, A Little Taste of Jam, which I also use when I'm playing on this server here, the World of Astera. Basically, it's basically his texture pack that's just been changed a few blocks to specifically suit Vastin. So right here, if you do want this pack, you can find it linked in Jermsy Boy's or Fixit's Discord, which I'll leave in the description below. If you've never been over there, please do come over and say hello. And like I said, everyone over there will be very helpful and give some good advice on builds if you want to look for some like-minded people to help out with builds and whatnot over there. So this balloon, once again, I started with a pure skeleton, just this bottom line, just singular, and so I made 2 ellipses, one on this angle and one on this angle, and then slowly worked them together, and yeah, just played around with it. I did get some help with the balloon from a good member, a good builder, who is also a member of Vastin, Juxy. Helped me just really shape out this balloon because I was struggling with it, so I want to give a shout out to him for helping me out with that. Afterwards, I saw a picture of a Minecraft airship that had a similar cage around it almost, so I liked the idea, and I just sort of made it a little bit more my own, with a few of the design features like this cross that came across our red plus, as well as making sure it was all the way around, that there was fences whereas theirs stuck right to the balloon in most parts. The rigging as well, once again, just keeping in mind that I'd made it say the wind was blowing a little bit to our right hand at the moment, so making the rigging both just a little bit swaying to that left hand side to match the rudder. Just little conscious decisions like that can just make a build go so much further and look a lot more lifelike and organic. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it, and that's pretty much my thought process behind these builds. If you do have any questions, please feel free to ask me. You can hit me up on Discord. If you are in Fixit's Discord, you can definitely find me there. I'm always there. Otherwise, hit me up in the comments. I would love to answer any questions anyone has about this build or other builds I've done. If anyone's seen bits of my builds on VD, or if you just want to ask what I'm doing next or what's going on, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I really want to see them. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It was my first video, so be kind, and thank you guys for watching. Alright, bye. Sorry guys, a little amendment to the last little section of this video. I just wanted to show you guys this in situation here in Realm of Vastin, just because I love this build. Probably one of my favorite builds of all time, and I love how it looks. Alright guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys soon. Bye.